everyone. We are continuing today in our social topics series by talking about language. I think language is an interesting topic because just like so many of our other social topics, Christians have varying beliefs regarding what is right. So we will do what we always do. We'll discuss some Bible verses, share the UMC stance, share the Manchester stance, and invite you all to join in that conversation. So, when we say that language is our topic, I'm specifically talking about the use of profanity, aka cuss words, bad words, cursing, grown up words, all that good stuff. The Encyclopedia Britannica defines profanity as words that are considered socially offensive due to being vulgar, obscene, or irreverent. That's an interesting definition because words like vulgar, obscene, and irreverent are very widely based on individual interpretation. In other words, one person may see something as irreverent and someone else might not, and neither person is right or wrong because it's completely subjective. In America in 2023, there is no list of words that you can Google that are marked as profane. The closest thing I could think of that might have a list is the movie ratings system, but alas, they don't even have one. They have a couple rules around the S word and the F word, but that's it. And we all know there are lots and lots of other words out there that people are offended by. Speaking of that, for the sake of this video, I'm not going to say cuss words outright. The reason I'm not is because, as I said, people have different beliefs and lines that they find offensive, and I want this video to be inclusive and accessible to anyone who wants to watch it. I know most of you all watch R-rated movies and hear language at school and everywhere else. I promise I'm not abstaining to protect your young and innocent ears. So yeah, the lack of clearly defined cuss words and the weirdly different categories of cuss words makes this a difficult subject to talk about. Like, some cuss words are seen as super bad, others are bad but not too bad, and others are only a little bit bad. And of course, no one actually agrees on which words belong in which category. Another thing that makes it difficult is that words change over time. Language evolves, and even words that stick around will sometimes change meaning. For example, the word gay used to be a slur for homosexual men. In addition to harassing gay men with it, people used to use it to call other people or things dumb. But then gay men reclaimed it, and now that word is no longer offensive to that community, unless, of course, you still use it to call something dumb. Very not cool. But since then, other words have popped up to take its place. Because at the end of the day, if we as humans don't like a person, a thing, or an entire group of people, especially marginalized people, we will find or invent a word to describe our strong, unfavorable feelings. God is creative, and we are made in God's image, so we are also quite creative. And boy, can we be creative when it comes to our language. So, what does the Bible say about language? Quite a lot, actually. It's almost like if people can talk, they're going to make some interesting choices with their speech, whether it's 2023 BC or AD. I'm going to share a couple verses with you all to try and give you a sense of the themes the Bible has around this topic. It is notable that the Bible also doesn't provide a list of specific cuss words, which is good considering how we just talked about how language evolves. So if someone tries to tell you that God doesn't like a particular word, you can argue back that the Bible does not specifically ban that individual word. Okay, so this verse is Colossians 3:8 says, "But now you must put them all away, anger, wrath, malice, slander, and obscene talk from your mouth." Ephesians 4:29 says, "Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear." Matthew 12:36 through 37 says, "I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned." Essentially, what I get from these verses is that our words do matter. Colossians referenced using our words to slander others, aka lie about someone, or speak with malice. Ephesians talked about using our words to corrupt others and not only using our words to build someone up. Jesus tells us in Matthew that we will be held accountable for what we say. So I don't think you can read the Bible and come to the conclusion that, well, God just doesn't care about what we say. Seems like God very much does. So what about the United Methodist Church? Our social principles actually do not say anything explicitly to this topic, which I find interesting because we seem to cover every topic on the planet. So the fact that we don't have a comment on this, I think, is significant. That makes me think that we just didn't find it to be that important, or at least as important as all those other topics that we cover. The closest things we have are statements on sexual harassment and bullying. The authors recognize that these two things, done primarily with words, can be deeply harmful to individuals and entire groups of people. So the social principles in general spend a lot of time recognizing privilege and the very real existence of marginalized and oppressed communities. One of the reasons I love being at Manchester is because we really embrace that aspect of our denomination, also working to educate and advocate for equality and equity for everyone. So while Manchester UMC does not have an official stance on the use of profanity, nor have I ever heard a sermon about it in the many years I've been a member and a staff member here, we would definitely take offense to any words that are used to condone or proliferate the marginalization of oppressed groups. So, for example, we are going to condemn the use of any racial slurs, homophobic slurs, sexist slurs, threats, or anything of this nature. And as our youth ministry is within the context of our larger church, that applies here too. You've probably noticed that if you use PG-13 or R language around an adult leader, you're going to get a look, followed up with a knock it off statement or something along those lines. Because generally, profanity is not going to harm someone. It can make some people feel uncomfortable, and because I want to keep this community welcoming and inclusive for all, we are going to choose to love and honor all people, especially the youngest among us, and keep our language rated G. If you do use language that is harmful, such as cuss words that target those marginalized communities that I mentioned earlier, or use the language that makes people feel hated, threatened, bullied, or diminished, that's a different thing altogether, and there will be consequences for that. What I actually think is most important in this conversation is something we haven't talked about yet. We've been talking about what not to say, but the Bible spends most of its time on this topic telling us what we should be saying. Ephesians, again, tells us to use our words to build up others, to give grace using our words, and to express thankfulness to God. Luke reminds us that out of the abundance of our hearts, our mouth speaks. In other words, we tend to express what we are feeling in our hearts with the words of our mouths. If our heart isn't full of love and compassion and respect, our words will often reflect that. I'm not going to ask you all as teenagers to watch how you speak everywhere in your life. I think you might be a little young for that intense of a directive. But I will ask you to consider that when you are at youth gatherings, to watch what you say and ask yourself these questions. Am I using my words to lift up my friends? Am I abstaining from words that tear others down? Am I gossiping about others? Or am I using my words to invite outsiders into my circle of friends? The answers to these questions are what I care about most when we are talking about language. And based on what the Bible and the UMC has to say, I think that's what God cares about most as well. All right, that's what I have. Thanks, everybody, and I hope you have great discussions in your small groups. Bye.